Welcome back. Well, this quarter, tech companies have been crying hoarse about the high attrition levels. And just a while ago, it wasn't just tech companies. A developer, macro tech developer, spoke up repeatedly about rising wages in construction and therefore the need to raise home prices. Now, nothing moves an economy as much as rise in hiring and rise in wages. To give us a check on what's the hiring scene and the salary scene, I'm joined by two people from staffing companies. We may get a third one as well. Ravi Vishwanathan, the group CFO of Quest Corp, and Ramani Datti, the CFO of Team Lease Services. So we should be getting Hitesh Oberoi of Info Edge shortly. Okay, we have Hitesh as well. Thank you very much, all of you, for joining us. Well, let me start with you, Hitesh. What is the sense you're getting in terms of hiring from your Naukri job index? Is it better than last quarter, better than last year? How does it compare with the last 5 years?
Yeah, Lata, see, the job market, in our view, has been on a roll for the last 5 quarters now.
Oh.
Calendar year 2020 was not a great year, but calendar year 2021 is the best, at least we have seen in Naukri in the last 15 years.
15.
Right? And, to start with, it was all about IT hiring because the pandemic, catalyzed digitalization globally, leading to a huge surge in demand for IT talent, digital talent, engineers, marketeers, designers, content creators, data guys. And then slowly and steadily, remote work seems to be picking up. And this was not an option which existed before. Anecdotally, one is beginning to hear of US companies hiring Indian engineers to work remotely out of India for jobs in the US. And then, of course, there's been a huge surge in startup investing. We now have close to 50, 70, 80 unicorns, depending on what you believe, and an equal number of unicorns. And close to $40 billion was poured into VCs by VCs into startups last year. And all of them now want to double, triple their teams. Lastly, another factor at work on the IT side at least has been the lack of supply. Because when we went into the pandemic, IT companies were slowing down. And as a result, enrollment at engineering colleges actually fell in the second half of the last decade. So what we have is a huge supply-demand mismatch. On the one hand, demand is growing, and on the other hand, supply has not kept pace. And as a result, like you said, tech salaries are going through the roof. In startups and for people with the right skills, salaries have grown by at least, increased by at least 50-60% over the last 2 years, if not more. And even for regular IT talent, salaries are up 30-40%.
Okay.
And it'll take a while, in my view, before, these things settle down, because demand has to settle down, because supply can't be ratcheted up overnight.
No, actually, Hitesh, the biggest sentence you've given us is that this is the fastest hiring scene that you have seen in 15 years, probably since Naukri came into existence. That's a huge statement you're making. Ramani, would you corroborate that? Ramani from Team Lease have just done a survey of 796 companies, small, mid and large. You are looking, your numbers which are flashing on the screen, Ramani, or will shortly flash, are also indicating strong hiring. But would you say it's the strongest you have seen in your tenure?
Absolutely, Lata. So I completely agree with Hitesh's views. So this is the strongest hiring trends that we have seen over the last few quarters. So compared to last year, Jan-March quarter, we have seen almost 100% surge in the hiring trends across industries. Obviously, IT is the topmost sector hiring right now. But again, there are many non-IT segments where we are seeing the hiring at their highest ever kind of trends. So be it e-commerce, education services, telecom. So we are seeing the numbers very promising. And we believe this kind of trend may continue for a few more quarters as well. And as Hitesh rightly mentioned, we are also facing challenges in terms of the supply side, because the demand is at all-time high, but the supply is limited. So there is only a limited number of kids who come out of college every year, right? So this kind of the demand-supply gap will continue for some time. And till the time the wage hikes and attritions will also get higher.
Limited number of college kids is not a description we ever have had about India. We always had teeming millions coming out of colleges, and we were always worried whether they would all be gainfully employed. Ravi, before I come to you, Hitesh, is the demand at entry level? Is the demand at mid level, senior level? Where is it most, or is it in all?
Well, across the board, but of course, there's massive demand at the entry level because, companies also need more frontline workers And number one. And number two, it's a good strategy to hire people at junior levels if you want to keep your costs low. Otherwise, costs are ballooning. So there's a massive demand for junior level talent, people with between 0 to 3 years experience. And what we're also seeing lately is a surge in demand for very senior talent, people with 15, 20, 25 years experience, because as companies set up new verticals or new businesses need senior management sort of to run the show also in these verticals. In general, there's demand across the board, across cities. IT cities are doing better than non-IT ones, but non-IT ones are beginning to catch up because of COVID, things were shut for a while. But as the economy opens up after COVID, it's leading to a surge in demand in sectors which were, quiet for a while: travel, tourism, hospitality, retail, real estate, education, banking. Even these sectors are beginning to see, more demand than earlier.
Okay. Oh, yes. I think the Team Lead survey is also corroborating that, and the numbers are showing up on the screen. Ravi Vishwanathan, thank you for your patience. Ravi, what about blue-collar workers? Do you all look at that category also? Is this largely an organized, educated sector demand, or is there also demand for manual work?
Hey, thanks, Lata. Yeah, I mean, we are seeing demand across the board, like what it's in line with what actually Hitesh said. There's a massive demand, and as we speak, I think the current open positions that we have to fill for what we call the so-called blue grey collar workforce is upwards of about 25,000, and this number doesn't seem to be coming down, even though we've been hiring consistently out of these, meaning about 40% conversions month on month, would mean that this number should come down. But there's been no let-up at all in these open positions that we are seeing. What we are seeing, we are seeing a couple of interesting things for the first time. The unicorns and the e-com players today are hiring more responsibly than what they've done before. In the sense that they would be trigger happy before. I mean, there was a time in capital when actually salaries were funded out of capital. I think they have now realized that salaries should be funded more out of revenues. And so there's more responsible hiring that's happening across the unicorns and the e-commerce today. It's not indiscriminate hiring with what we have seen in the past. We've seen some new sectors coming into play that were never there before. Take, for example, construction. I mean, construction was completely in the ambit of the unorganized sector. And we are now having fairly large, good traction with the construction industry, actually. And they are actually testing waters with formal players like us, because they were impacted pretty badly after the first wave when they could not get the workforce back onto the sites on time. So, I mean, we've seen construction coming up. Manufacturing, thanks to PLI schemes, are having lots of discussions with us, actually, in terms of what could this be.
I'm very keen on this construction that you're talking about, Ravi. Is this the strongest you have seen, or is it just stronger than the previous 2 years, where obviously things were not too good with migrant labor not there and COVID scare? So is it just better than the last 2 years, or is it better than pre-COVID times?
See, pre-COVID, I don't think the former staffing companies even operated in the construction industry. It was completely with the unorganized sector. So it's a completely post-COVID phenomena that we are seeing. And we are expanding our footprint in construction very responsibly, I would say, actually.
Okay. What about you all, Ramani? Would team leads also corroborate that blue-collar, rural are also areas where people are employing, beyond the tier 2?
Absolutely, Lata. So, in fact, we are seeing the maximum demand in the entry-level jobs and in tier 2, tier 3 places, not just in the metro cities. So, thanks to COVID, so now more and more jobs are decentralized. Work from home options also have been given for some of these non-blue collar, grey collar, and white collar segments. So, also interestingly, what we have seen is that a majority of the staff that we are hiring now are in a way transition from informal sector to formal sector. So this is also driven by the COVID scenario, which we have seen over the last 2 years. So companies have identified the risks of working with informal players, salary not being paid on time, non-compliances. So there is more and more preference to work with formal players. So that's where we are seeing more and more business also coming to organized sector.
Okay. Hitesh, finally, I don't know whether you all cater to that segment. Everyone's talking about the K-shaped recovery. So a lot of hiring in the organized formal sector. Would you say the bottom of the pyramid is also hiring? I mean, do you see, I don't know if in Naukri even caters to, delivery boys, couriers? Are all those people also hiring more?
Yeah, so we now have a platform called Job Hai, which is basically for blue collar and hiring.
Yeah.
And see, what we are seeing is two things. One, in certain categories, there's massive demand, and like drivers, security staff and salon services, because these sectors are getting back once again because they were shut for a while. And of course, there's massive demand for delivery boys because all the IT commerce companies want to hire delivery boys, and this is also a sector which tends to see very high attrition. Attrition rates in this category are upwards of 100% year on every year. And what we are now seeing is that SMEs have also become digitally savvy, and blue collar talent has also become digitally savvy, because so earlier they would not use the internet to hire, but now they're now using the internet to hire. So at least on the internet, we are seeing a huge demand for blue collar talent. Whether it's real and whether it's happening in the real economy, hard for me to say at this point in time.
Okay. And you would say that salary increases are down the line, Hitesh?
Absolutely. So it's beginning to happen now. Earlier, like I said, most increases were limited to people with the right skills, the digital skills, but now it's spreading. And now my sense is that your viewers, if they have the right sector and they have the right skills, can expect the best increment, ever.
Okay.
At least in the last few years.
Okay. All right. Right skills is important, of course, and right sectors. Ramani, a final question to you. Exactly that. Our salary increase, TeamLease always has catered to even the lower part of the K, to some extent at least. So are there salary hikes? At least Macrotech developers was telling us that construction labor is charging more or asking for more. Are you getting that sense that blue collar, rural also, wages also going up?
That's right, Lata. So historically, if I take last 5 to 8 years, so we used to have a salary inflation on average between 4 to 6%. So that has gone to almost 10 to 12% this year. So this, I'm talking about the grey collar and blue collar staffing, the non-IT segment. So there also we are seeing an increase in the average salaries.
Okay. That's an extremely positive conversation I've had. Hitesh Oberoi, grateful to you for completing your conference and attending to this discussion. Ramani and Ravi, thank you very much indeed for all your inputs. It's a heartening conversation because what our experts are telling us is, especially Hitesh, it's the strongest hiring they have seen in the last 15 years. And the others corroborate that the hiring is not just at the top echelons, but even in blue collar and hitherto informal sectors like construction workers are now coming into the formal sector, and there are salary increases even at that level, not just in tier 1 but also tier 2 and tier 3 cities. A very heartening conversation indeed. For the markets, there is some amelioration of the red, but it is still a large paint of red, and the advanced declines remain. 4 stocks in the red for 1 in the green. Let's see how things pan out from here on. Chartbusters.